So, not surprising, this case relating to the man who was tortured, allegedly, and branded with the word rat, is gone to the Special Criminal Court. Did take a while. We kind of knew it was going that direction because of some of the individuals involved in it.
Yeah, I mean, it was always, I suppose, likely to go to the Special Criminal Court. Obviously, the alleged attack occurred, and within, 24, 48 hours, all 5 men were charged. But in the aftermath of it, a number of months later, the DPP brought a further charge, and that charge was relating to the alleged offences occurring for the purpose of enhancing the ability of a criminal organisation to commit a serious offence, basically under Section 72, which is the anti-gangland laws. So once a charge like that occurs, it doesn't automatically follow that it goes to Special Criminal Court, but there is a strong possibility.
So in other words, it's recognising the men as being part of a criminal organisation.
Well, it's certainly alleging the men to be part of a criminal organisation and saying the alleged offence that occurred was, to enhance a criminal organisation's ability to function.
And has the organisation been named yet?
No, it hasn't been named. Now, obviously, there's the other charges, which are, assault causing harm and false imprisonment. They're, I suppose, standard charges, for want of a better term.
So who are the 5?
Well, the 5 are, there's 3 brothers, Jason, Devon and Brandon Hennessy, and there's Kenneth Fitzsimons and his son Dean Fitzsimons. So 5 people in total. Obviously, Jason Hennessy, Devon and Brandon, they will be known in terms of their father was shot dead in Browne Steakhouse in a very notorious and infamous murder on Christmas Eve in the restaurant in West Dublin. In the aftermath of that, we would have had pictures of them leading the funeral cortege when their father was buried. And Dean Fitzsimons and his son would have also been at that funeral, very prominent members. Now, obviously, subsequently, people will know the backstory, that the gunman who was killed at the scene, Tristan Sherry, and I think is it 8 people in total have subsequently been sent to prison in relation to that offence. But yes, that's I suppose why they would be such familiar names to people who read newspapers or listen to podcasts.
And Hennessy himself, who was murdered on Christmas Eve in the restaurant, was somebody who had sort of gathered a grouping of young men around him.
Yeah.
In a formal, almost criminal organisation.
Yeah. I mean, he was
drug dealing.
Yes.
He was making a lot of money from that. And he was costing a huge amount of the state and police time, because there was an awful lot of activity around his activities as such, and surveillance by the Gardaí. He had sort of gone to war with others, feuding. We spoke about him before being a little bit old for all that. He kind of came into it at an older age.
Yeah, I mean, he'd had a regular job. He'd been a wage earner, PRSI player, or any of that sort of stuff. Now, he would have been a boxing coach and been known as maybe kind of a sort of local hard man type. But obviously the criminal organisation of which he was a part had maybe shot to prominence as organisations like the Mr. Flashy organisation and other gangs like that had sort of dropped off, and they were suspected of being a very serious player, particularly in the sort of cocaine and heroin and crack cocaine trade, in sort of as a local dealing network primarily, based around that part of West Dublin, Cordov, Blanchardstown, parts of Finglas, and they were became a prime target for Gardaí. As you said, they had been involved, also that criminal organisation, where had been involved in a number of feuds. They played a role in what was called the Cordov feud. That would have been an ongoing situation where there was lots of violence, lots of shootings, lots of violent attacks, and then that criminal organisation would have also played into that kind of complicated, flashy feud, really.
And obviously in the aftermath of Jason Hennessy's murder, there was huge tensions.
Huge tensions and lots of policing. because this is all kind of concentrated in a small area, tensions were very high. But despite all that, and the fact that Gardaí intercepted a lot of things that were going on, seized a lot of drugs, seized a lot of firearms, there was a huge amount of arson attacks, cars set on fire, homes often of innocent people as well, targeted. But despite all of that, in the middle of it all, that sort of street dealing network continued on. And certainly in parts of Cordov, we spoke to people over that period of time who would have spoken about the level of intimidation, the open drug dealing that was occurring, and how this criminal network were, I suppose, notorious for acts of violence.
Okay. This incident happened, of course, after Jason Hennessy's murder.
Yeah.
And we did get some interesting insight into exactly what the state's case is going to be against these men, because they applied for bail at one point in last February. And there was evidence given at the bail hearing because the police were objecting to them getting out.
Yeah.
So there was a good bit of evidence around what had actually happened. So the court heard that that victim was branded 9 times with the word rat. And there was a custom-made cattle iron used for that. He was waterboarded.
Yeah.
He was beaten with a metal pole and an axe, and he was run over by a motorbike. And he has told police that he was told he would be raped by a stick. Now, Detective Sergeant Mark Murphy gave the evidence when he said he was objecting to bail on a number of grounds, including fears of witness intimidation and the strength of the evidence against each of the accused. And he outlined the case, saying that the previous Thursday in February of this year, that the victim went to the Hennessy family home where he had some sort of a prearranged meeting, met the 3 brothers, and later Kenneth Fitzsimons arrived. He went to an outhouse at the rear of the property with them, and during a conversation, he had his phone snatched from his hand and was punched in the face by Jason Hennessy. And the court was told that the victim has alleged he was told to tell the men the truth before Kenneth Fitzsimons grabbed this steel bar and beat him across the leg 7 or 8 times. The court was also told that he was asked about giving information to people concerning the group and of lying.
Yeah, the evidence was given that Brandon Hennessy told the alleged victim that he had deliberately given him false information and knowing it would go to somebody and that had somehow come back, and that he then grabbed the steel bar and beat the alleged victim all over his body. And then it was also heard in the court that Jason Hennessy then took a cattle marker branding device, is what it's described as, with the word rat on it. So it's shaped into the word rat, and said he'll talk after this. And
he used a camping stove. He ignited that to heat it so as it was red hot before, obviously, he used it.
Yes. And then obviously this is part of a bail hearing. The guards give this evidence. It's not contested in the way it would be at a trial. You don't get the defence's sort of version of it. So it's kind of, it is what it is.
It's the state's case, or certainly the bones of what will be the state's case.
But it's not been tested in the way, and all the men have certainly pled not guilty at this point. However, it's also alleged then that Dean Fitzsimons arrived at the property.
Now, is he the father or the son?
He is the son.
The son.
Kenneth is the father. And it is claimed that he told the victim, tell the truth or be leaving in a body bag. And that Jason Hennessy is then accused of branding the victim, or the alleged victim, 6 times on the side of the torso.
And I think Fitzsimons, the court heard during that bail hearing, also threatened to get a Stanley knife and cut off the victim's ears.
Yes. And it is alleged then that Kenneth Fitzsimons also was asked him, who was the lookout for me at Finglas Garda Station. Well, then they're obviously questioning him, it is claimed. And Devin Hennessy asked him, who set me up at Costa Coffee? So they're obviously
questioning him, accusing him.
Yes, and the victim it is claimed said he didn't know anything, and then Jason Hennessy is accused of branding him in the face with the cattle iron.
And of course, this Dean Fitzsimons is also accused of putting a towel over his face and pouring water over the towel, which is obviously a form of torture known as waterboarding. We've heard about that.
Yes.
previously in courts. So, I mean, it is a very, it's going to be a very...
well, it's a graphic case, of course.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, it's really going to be a case that, and the fact that it's before the Special Criminal Court will be because it's seen as a case surrounding gangland and organised crime. But the evidence, even so far, is graphic, and that's before we would get on to in a trial. If this goes to trial, these people have pleaded not guilty. If they don't change the plea, this trial will be heard, and usually trials take, 4 to 5 weeks. There would be evidence from the usual. In these cases, there would be phone evidence. There would be... there was a photograph of this guy released, wasn't there?
There was a photograph. Well, it wasn't released.
Released by somebody, so it went around WhatsApp. I mean,
it went around WhatsApp.
On my phone at one stage, I think.
Yeah, it went around WhatsApp even before anybody was arrested. So,
and there was a photograph of the victim in question, who has actually been named. But anyway, he was sitting on a couch with the rat thing across his head, and you could see the sort of the injuries on his body. He was just in a pair of shorts, wasn't he?
Well, you could see it on his torso, I mean, certainly a graphic image, let's put it that way. Now, obviously, it's gone to the Special Criminal Court, and it's gone under a very specific piece of legislation that the guards have to show that the ordinary courts are inadequate to secure the effective administration of justice. So the guards have to apply for this, or the DPP have to apply to bring it to the Special Criminal Court, and then that is looked at by the judiciary, and they've decided in this case it does qualify. Now, we have heard during that bail hearing from the defence team representing the accused that their clients were entitled to the presumption of innocence, and that the nature and seriousness of the alleged offences wasn't grounds for an automatic refusal of bail. So they've made that point clear.
There was a bit of a circus that day in the court because of their behaviour, the 5 accused, and there was evidence given about, during this bail hearing, that Browne Hennessy, the state is going to say, the victim has told them that Browne Hennessy said to him, pull down, or he said to the other men, pull down his tracksuit and rape him with a stick.
Yeah.
And adding that threat didn't come. So that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Which the state is saying. But when that evidence was given, Dean Fitzsimons audibly said from the dock, get up, my son. And there was a bit of kind of bravado going on with the accused. Like, they were brought to this court late at night from memory, and this was something that every media attended. Yeah,
I mean, it was one of those rare court hearings, I'd say, that went past midnight or, around that. Not a common hearing, but there would be security issues, and it was obviously a hugely publicised attack, I suppose.
And back in the prison then, in the aftermath of that, one of the Hennessy's, which is sort of light, humorous relief, came when he suggested he was going to go on hunger strike. And I remember even some of the comments on our own site were like,
they were. Well, I mean, I don't know so there was...
He did tell the prison he was going on hunger strike and he was refusing meals, but I think he only refused the one.
Yeah, well, it didn't go on for too long anyway. Let's put it that way. No, I mean, it absolutely... so they've been housed in Portlaoise prison. They are remand prisoners, obviously, but as we've spoken about before, I think in other cases, sometimes remand prisoners are brought to Portlaoise, even though typically they would be housed in Clover Hill or a remand prison of that type, know.
And of course, the point of that bail hearing was so they didn't get out.
Yeah.
And Detective Sergeant Murphy cited his concerns that they would, if they did get out, they would be directly involved in further acts of violence, including assault and false imprisonment. And he believed that Jason Hennessy, he said, Jr., would continue to have a significant impact on the community of Cordov, and that the alleged offending, he said, sends out a message to the community that actions against the group will not be tolerated.
Yeah.
So, on those bases, the Gardaí didn't want them out and the state agreed.
Yeah. Now, the men have been granted legal aid, and we'll obviously, as the court progresses and it goes, it's been going for trial on indictment, as they call it. We will no doubt hear different versions of the events, and all 5 men charged will have a chance to mount a proper defence.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to this when they're back in court.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.